I'd like to welcome everyone to the distance training series for the SABE GoVoter project.
Teresa, I'm
Excuse me?
so sorry. This is Gabe. I just spoke with Terry. She said that she is on the phone, but she's in listen only mode. So on the call-in number. So she's on the line, but didn't know if it'd be possible to get the either get the listen only mode taken off or be able to change it so she can actually speak. I don't know if that's possible for you all to do on your end.
I think, Juliana, you can send her a pin, right?
No, she needs to put that pin in.
She did, but she said that she's in listen only mode.
Oh, that's true.
Do you have her muted, Juliana?
Nope, I don't have her showing. Have her showing on the computer.
You don't have her showing at all?
Just on the computer.
How strange. Okay. Terry, I guess we're going to have to try and see if you can redial in, because there's a pin that you have to put in that the phone gives you that we don't give you, and see if you can get on this time. I am so sorry that this is not working for you, but right after you put in the access code, there should be I believe it's a 3-number PIN. So hopefully that will work if you redial and put in the code and then listen for the PIN. We'll have her try again. Welcome again to the distance training. Go ahead to the next slide, Juliana. The GoVoter project team is myself, Teresa Moore, and Juliana.
And my name is Juliana Wadenia.
And what do you do for the project?
So I help out as administrative assistant and help with the contracts and sending out the webinar announcements, and help with the toolkit and any technical assistance that your state may have.
And Bill, would you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for the project?
Hello, my name is Bill Lucero, and I do the technology support.
Thank you, Bill. And Essie?
Hi, everyone. This is Essie Peterson in Cincinnati, Ohio. And the work that I do with the project focuses on the voter experience survey. I work with a lot of the organizations as the liaison to the project to collect that information and to write it up.
Thank you all. And you'll see Tia Nellis, when she can, she joins us. She is the SABE president. And so when she's available, she joins us. Again, I'd like to thank you for being on with us today. And Juliana, could you go to the next slide, please? So that is about us. And next we want to hear, we know that there are several of you that are in different locations, and we would like to hear who is on the phone with us from Arkansas.
This is Darren Morris with Disability Rights.
Thank you, Darren. Who else is on with us today?
Alan?
Alan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Is he still there?
We might have lost him. Did Eric make it on?
He was on.
Okay. And Tom, are you on?
No, I don't see Tom. Hold on, let me go check and see what's going on with him.
Some way or another, I got muted. I'm sorry, guys.
Okay. And who is this?
This is Alan. Some way or another, I got muted.
Okay.
I'm back with you.
Hi, Alan. Thank you for being on today. And let's see who is on with us today from California.
This is Gabe from Disability Rights California.
Hi, Gabe.
Hi.
And did Terry get her audio issues worked out? I'm hoping she redialed in.
I'm not sure. She hasn't called me back. She called me while we were introducing people, and so she hasn't called me back to say she hasn't been able to dial back in, but
Okay.
if
Well,
she's
hopefully-
not able to call in, she's definitely on the tuning into the webinar, because she said that she can hear everyone. She just can't say anything. So.
Yes, I see her on.
Okay, great. And Indiana is on with us today.
So this is Amanda Circle with Self Advocates of Indiana. This is Kelsey Cowley with Self Advocates of Indiana.
I'm sorry, it was really hard to hear you. Can you try to get a little closer to the phone, maybe?
This is Kelsey Cowley with Self Advocates of Indiana.
Wonderful. Welcome, Kelsey. Who was that?
This is Kristen Delaney from
Kristen?
Delaney from Indiana Disability Rights.
Thank you. Do you have anybody else on with you today?
Jill Smith with the Arc of Indiana.
Okay. Welcome, Jill. Is there anyone else on with you? Don't want to leave anybody out.
That's all
Okay.
from Indiana. Thank you.
Who was that?
That was Olive from Indiana. Yeah, thank you.
Olive? Okay. Wonderful. Well, today, go to the next slide, Juliana. Bill's going to tell us about what you need to know.
Okay, so a reminder, we will be recording this webinar today, so you can listen to it later. We will be also taking breaks if needed. If you have any questions, say your name and state, and then you can ask your questions. If you have any comments or other questions, you can always put them in the parking lot that we are creating.
And the parking lot is when it's not being something that we're talking about right now, but it is something that maybe we'll talk about later, or is on a different subject that you and I can talk about at a different time. So just for those who may not have been on the webinar for webinar number 1, last time we met each other's state teams. We learned how each state team works together, And we found out that you guys have a very close relationship between the PNA and the self-advocacy organizations in your state, and that's wonderful to make your work a lot more tightly woven, and you know how each other works a little bit, so it does improve the presentation for your audience. We found out where you find the SABE GoVoter toolkit, and we started talking about how the toolkit allows you to customize your state training. And we really wanted to focus on working together as a team and how important that is, that you have good communication, that whenever possible you do get together, and when you are together that you share ideas and use lots of energy to start thinking about where you might do your training. Next slide, please.
All right, everybody. I'm going to unmute you, and will you let us know if you had a chance to visit the sabeusa.org website? So anybody from Arkansas, have you visited the website?
Yes, I looked at it.
Right. Alan, have you? We'll get back to him. All right, and Gabe and Terry, have you had a chance to check out the website?
Yes, I have. And Terry's Terry's on. She tried using the same call-in code, access code, and she's still in listen-only mode. So I'm not sure what's going on. They keep giving her a listen-only mode code, so I'm not sure.
Excuse me, this is Darren. I was going to mention that to y'all. That's what they do. When I just tried calling in, testing it a few minutes ago, the phone will give you you can dial in and put in the code. But once you do that, the only thing they're going to do is tell you if you get a SS code, put it in. But if not, hit the hash key, and they're going to just put you in listen only mode. It's not going. If you don't have a code that you giving us or anything, it's not going to let you talk. He gonna put you in listen only mode.
Does it give you that option to speak to somebody from the webinar?
No, it does not. When I called in, it says gave you you call in, put the code in, and then the phone goes to the automatic thing gonna tell you if you have a code, please put it in so you can talk. But if not, push hash and they're going to put you in listen only mode.
Oh, that is strange. I know, Jill Smith, did you call in on the phone, or are you with the ladies in Indiana?
I'm with the group in Indiana.
Okay. Let's investigate that and let you guys know about how to troubleshoot that.
Okay, but I mean, Terry said that she can see everything and hear everybody. She just can't talk because she's it won't allow her to get out of listen only mode.
Another thing we've done, Teresa, do you want to do that? Is have her call me. I just put my phone where the speaker is.
Sure, that's a possibility. We can always try it, because I hate losing her voice on these comments.
All right. So Terry, my number is 602 502 7426.
It kind of went out, Juliana. Do you want to just break into this? Can you break into this screen and type it up there?
Yeah.
Why don't we go ahead and check with the folks in Indiana while we see if that works? Did anyone from Indiana get to look at the SABEUSA.org website since our last call?
Yes, we did. I think most of us had a chance to look over it briefly. I don't know that we dug in too deep, but we looked it over.
Okay, that's all we want you to do is get comfortable with maneuvering around the website. And did you get to go to the GoVoter tab?
Yes, we looked at the toolkit.
Okay.
The GoVoter page.
Okay, that's great. So did everyone else look at make it all the way to the toolkit? In California, Gabe, did you make it all the way to the toolkit?
Yeah, I looked over a number of the items that were in the toolkit.
Okay. And Terry, do we have her? Juliana, do we have Terry? She must be working.
No, I got her. She's on now.
Terry, did you get a chance to go to SABEUSA.org and
Yes.
and go to the toolkit?
I'm doing that now.
Okay. Well, we're going to get a chance to look at it today for those that didn't make it all the way to the toolkit in just a few moments. We have a little bit of work to do before that. Go to the next slide, please. Because you had some other questions that we wanted to know about each of your states. And we wanted to know how many days before you vote do you have to be registered? And what do you have to show the poll worker? Sometimes they're called election officers or election board worker in some of the states. So we wanted to know, what do you have to show that person when you're checking in? And there are many voting locations. Where do you vote in your state? So let's start with Indiana. Do you have answers to all those questions? How many days before you're registered?
Take that one.
In Indiana, voters must register at least 29 days before the election.
Did I get that correct? It was 29 days?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. You're very soft-spoken as well, so we want to make sure.
Yeah, it was 29 days.
Okay. And what do you have to show the poll worker there?
We have to show them an ID with includes a picture, your name, and an expiration date. It has to be issued either by the state of Indiana or the United States government.
I can barely hear you guys in Indiana. Can you repeat that?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. For some reason, my mic is louder. So you have to show a valid picture ID that has your photo, your name, an expiration date, which is not expired or has not expired since before the most recent election, and be issued by the state of Indiana or the U.S. government.
Okay. I'm sorry, Kelsey, that we weren't able to hear you very well. But from the things that I did hear, it sounds like you have a good grasp of it also. And how about in California?
Well, we have one more question for Indiana, and it is,
Oh, sorry.
do you vote in your state? Where are some of the places that you can vote at?
Thank you, Juliana.
So, the group from Indiana?
Sorry.
Voting
Yeah,
location.
1 second. Sorry, I'm here. You can find your polling location online, or we have a 1866 number, or reviewing your registration confirmation card that they send you after registering to vote.
Can you give us some examples of places that you can vote at?
Can you hear me okay? So in my county, you can either
Oh,
vote
I can't hear. I'm sorry.
I don't know why mine's right. Churches, schools, any kind of community center, county clerk's office. There's, I mean, all sorts of different places.
All right. Well, thank you. So we hear from California.
You have to register at least 15 days before you can vote. And here we don't have to show anything. If you voted before, you don't have to show anything. If it's your first election and you registered by mail, you may have to bring something as ID.
All right. And where are some of the places that you can vote at?
Schools, government buildings, clubhouses, agencies that have signed up. UCP, where I work, we actually were a polling place.
Dave, did you want to chime in on anything else?
Yeah, the only other very rare instance for ID where you have to show ID, excuse me, is if you have recently changed your party preference between elections, and so every now often you will have to show it if they don't have an updated your updated information if you've recently changed party preference, but that is the only other very rare case that you would have to show it in California.
All right, thank you. All right, how about Arkansas?
Yeah, hold on 1 second. Yes. Arkansas. Oh, yes, here I am. Y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The take and vote you have here in Arkansas, you have 30 days in person to vote, and the same for mail-in vote. You have 30 days, 30 days before the election day. If this falls on a Sunday, then the voter registration form must be postmarked 29 days before election day.
And what do you have to show the poll worker?
You voter ID requirement in person. If you're not voting for the first time in Arkansas, you don't need to provide if you're not voting the first time, you don't need to provide a voter ID to vote in person. If you voting for the first time in Arkansas, registration to vote by mail. And I'm sorry, I think I'm reading that wrong. Sorry about that. okay, for people voting in person, if you're not voting for the first time in Arkansas, you don't need to provide ID to vote. If you're voting for the first time in Arkansas, register to vote by mail and then submit a copy of your ID when the registration begins. I don't understand it, but I don't know if I'm reading that, but that's why I pulled offline and thing.
Okay.
And then they said you need a driver license, a non-driver's ID, a current utility bill, a statement from the government clerk, a paycheck, or other government document.
Right. And where are some of the places that you can vote at?
Pretty much almost the same as they have schools set up, community centers, and some offices are set up for people to vote at.
They also have churches.
Oh, in churches, yes.
Right. All right. So if you can, will you email me those answers to the questions, and then I could put them on this slide, so when we have the slide available online, then everyone can see what kind of rules.
Okay, once I get back up, I'll email them to you, yes.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
All right, Teresa, you're next.
So one of the things is that we're not torturing you on purpose. It really is important that you have this information, and as we go through the toolkit today, you'll be able to check out where all those answers fit into the training. And today we're going to we're going to go through the whole toolkit, well, as far as we can get. We had some minor delays, but I'm glad that the folks can be on with us. And we'll learn how to design your training for your participants. And I keep talking about that. That's the group that you're presenting to. And when you are getting to know your audience, it's really helpful to be flexible and be ready to make some minor changes or major changes depending on whether you had your audience sign up ahead of time and you ask them some basic questions. You may have members that you're inviting that you know, or if you're going to have more of a community location, you find out when you get in the room that they're not experienced voters, that you can add some of the information just based on what they need to know and help them get ready to vote, help them work over past issues and things like that. And being able to be flexible with your training is because you're well prepared and you're going to make it look so seamless because you have the answers available to you and you have the whole toolkit available to you. And then and personalizing your training for your state, having that state specific information. We heard that some information is very similar and some information is very different. And so being able to answer questions about maybe the voter hasn't voted for a while and there's been changes in your state and you need to help them correct that information and bring them up to date. So that's why it's important to know what your state rules are. And so we're going to go ahead and go to the website, Juliana, if you could please.
Did anybody want to take a break, or we're all good?
Keep going.
I'm good.
Good in
We're good
Arkansas?
in Indiana.
Great.
We're good. Yeah.
Okay, great.
All right, I'm going to.
So there's the website. And then Juliana, could you show us where we need to go? We need to go to GoVoter. And then we need to go to Toolkit. A little small. You can, and then we're going to take a look at the toolkit and the slides. You can see how to maneuver through them if you have all the slides available. Use the slide bar.
Going to.
And so last time we learned that the toolkit uses pictures, icons on the side of the page for you to follow along with. And they estimate the time for you. They tell you what the supplies are that you need for teaching that section and what activities are going to be on big paper. And we learned that you can have an agenda or you can write one up on big paper. It's totally what's comfortable with you, for your team. And then, Juliana, could you show the blurry screen slide, please? And we learned that we use a technique called the blurry screen. That means you make sure your projector is set awkwardly so that you can't really see the picture very well. And this is your way of getting your audience. Many members of the audience will start coming up to you and saying, I can't tell what you're doing. It's blurry. And you'll say, oh, just a moment, please. We'll get that straightened out. And they'll even try to correct it for you and say, oh, thank you, but we'll get that in just a second. And so when we start the training, we have these blue boxes that help you to know what to say. And the blue box tells us that sometimes voting can make you feel like a blurry screen, and it's not clear to you. And we're going to try to clear up your voting questions and what the concerns are that you have about voting or any issues that you have about voting. We'll try to clear those up, and then you adjust it to a clear screen. And we want to make voting fun and interesting and help you find your voting power. So you have room for notes that of what that makes you feel like when you did not know about voting. You can put your own notes in there. And why are we here today? We're going to use slides and handouts to make sure that everyone knows the purpose of the training. So go to the next slide, Juliana. And here you have where you're going to introduce your training team. And you can put a state picture there if you want to. Any of the team members that you have logos for. It helps people connect to the different groups that you have present on your team. And remember that our training requires that there is at least one self-advocate and a PNA person to be there for technical assistance on the voting questions. And all of your team members are welcome, though. You can have other community members that support you if you need to, but we require at least one of each representation. But we encourage you to invite other community members to participate and help you with your training. It can be other agencies. It can even be legislators, as long as they agree to be nonpartisan and participate in your training if you like, when they're discussing the different items. So we've had a little bit of everything at our trainings, and we've also made sure that we have the voting machines there for folks to practice on from the county or the precinct. So depending on how long ahead you do your training, you can make sure that those folks are present, and we encourage you to invite them. Hopefully you have an existing relationship with them through your PNA, but I encourage the self-advocate to be present when the PNA is inviting them so that you can learn what to say, just in case it's the self-advocate that needs to invite them. Go ahead to the next slide, please. We want to make sure that everyone is comfortable, and you're going to do the logistics and the purpose of the training. Logistics are those things about where things are located to help make your audience comfortable. It's where things are located, and the bathroom is always important to tell people where that's at and make sure that they know that it's okay for them to get up and go to the bathroom during your training. You want people to be comfortable, especially if you're doing a long training. So the purpose of the training, it's how to register to vote, where you can vote, how to choose candidates that support your beliefs, how to get around voting problems, and get involved and build a voting community. And we're going to learn about the law. The Help America Vote Act is HAVA. HAVA says that all individuals with disabilities have the right to vote privately and independently. And we're going to talk about that even more throughout the training. So as you can see, number 8 on your toolkit has when you go over these items and make sure that they're up on your screen. And if you like, we have a handout that says get to know each other. That's when you would want to hand that out. Or you can give plain paper. That's okay too, because you can leave these questions up on the screen. So, how to get to know each other. That's when people from the community want to move around and find somebody in the room that you don't know and get to know each other. What is your name? Where are you from? That can even be interesting if you're from different counties and different things, then they may have different questions and we need to know that they're in the room. If you were not here today, what would you be doing? That's a lot of fun. And then on big paper, you capture what is your biggest voting question. And that's information that the SABE GoVoter project would like to capture. So you'll introduce your partner. Go ahead, Juliana. And this is how to do the activity. Hi, my name is Pat. My name is Peter. Where are you from? Phoenix. To find out what they would be doing, watching my favorite soap opera. What is your biggest voting question? I want to know about how to register to vote. Could be anything come up as your biggest voting question. And so we want to capture those. Juliana.
I gotta unmute myself. So the next topic is how voting fits into your life. So if you choose this topic, then these slides and the is to you. So again, you would make sure you have the allotted time and make sure you bring all the items that are listed, the masking tape, the frequency markers, the big paper, and it's a good idea to make sure that the big papers are already labeled with how voting fits into your life and other things you vote on. So then you would go ahead and talk about slides 4 through 7. The first one is how voting fits into your life. And then you can ask the group these questions. How has voting made a difference in the lives of people with disabilities? And then you can talk about different things that people vote on. And you can customize this so you can list all of these, you can list a handful. Again, it's up to you to decide what you want to put on. What are things that people can vote on in your state?
And you might use this as a way to see how involved the voters in the room are. And we find that a lot of people vote for the federal issues, but the number goes down considerably when you talk about local issues. So it's good to check out what's going on with the voters in the room.
So the last activity is where people can do some type of voting. And one of the ones that we do is called the candy one. And what we do is we make sure we supply papers for people to vote on and also have some of the items that they're going to be voting on if it's something that they can eat. And it's the best idea to make sure, call ahead of time if you're going to an agency or an organization or another place where people meet and make sure that people can have some of these items. And we always make sure we have like sugar-free candy if we do the candy activity. So the way to introduce this is talk about how people vote and the importance of people's voting in their life. And you ask these questions about if people have voted before, and let people talk about some of their stories. And then if you choose to, you can show some of the videos that we have up on the SABE website. And then back to slide 5, going back to how has it made a difference in people's lives. And here's where you can write some of the answers that people tell you on the big paper. What else would you want to say about the candy activity, Teresa?
Okay, so the way that this works is you have 3 different kinds of candy, and you have a ballot that has the candy's pictures on it. We have several samples for you to choose from. This is just one of them with different kinds of candy on them. And like Juliana said, if you're going to a facility, there may be rules about chocolate or something like that. So you need to check with them if you're doing facility training because we don't want to risk anything bad happening. But you make sure that one is very popular, the next one is pretty popular, and one that's not as popular. We have lollipop here. On one of them, we have licorice, and so we make sure that we have a variety for them to choose from on their ballot. And the candy game, it's a practice on voting, and it seems silly, but for somebody who has never voted or had those choices before, it's really interesting to see how excited they get that they get to vote for the things that they want in their life, and that's candy. Food is a very good way of interacting with people, and they relate to it very well. And especially if you want to liven up your audience, you want to do this activity, or if you have voters who've not voted before, it's really good. And you want them to choose the one that they want. And you make sure that you give them instructions. You want to vote for just one. And then when they turn them in, you divide them up according to how the audience voted, and then you record what happened. And then you can use different color paper, or you can just make sure that you have the ballots separated. And so we want to make sure that they have several opportunities. And then when they vote, divide it up, and then the most popular, you want to make sure that you say, all of you who voted for chocolate, for example, you forgot to register, and you rip them up and you make a big deal of it because they did not register, their votes don't count. And then for the second most popular, you say, those of you who you forgot to update that you moved, and your votes don't count, and you tear them up. And then you say, oh, great, the 4 people who voted for lollipops, you have all the power. You now get to decide what we're going to do in our county for people with disabilities and their services. And you decided that this year no one gets a new wheelchair. And so you decided that whatever the issue might be that's most important to people right then, could be a number of different things, services, anything like that, is going to upset your audience, that those 4 people are in control, and how awful it would be if only 4 people got to decide what happens to the rest of us. And now we hand out the lollipops, and then say, that's great, right? And then you make sure that after they understand what's going on, you can use the blue boxes to help you practice this. You want to make sure you practice it with your team before, and you can make up your own questions that are important to your community. Go ahead, Juliana, to the next page in the toolkit. So it does take a while for people to do this, but you want to make sure that you do it, because it's really fun way of interacting with your audience, and also getting them to know why it's so important that people vote, and that they register, and that they update their registration, is the examples I used, but you can use different ones. And then we asked them, how did it feel when you didn't get to choose? And those kinds of things when we're wrapping this up. And if you're not voting, then you're taking a big risk that a small group of people is making the decisions for all of us. And then you take any other comments. How did it feel? It feels bad. It feels, I don't feel like I'm in charge. Those kinds of things will be said. And then you can decide if you need a break after that, or if you want to continue. Keep going, Juliana, on the.
Well, I was gonna ask Indiana. I know they've done the vote project in the past and recently. Have you guys done this candy activity, or have you guys done something different?
We haven't done this. No, we have another toolkit that we had created a while ago. That's more about like planning a voting event, like a voting registration event. So no, I don't. At least not since I've been here. So I don't know if they did it before, but we have not.
Okay, I remember do it from before.
Okay. Go ahead to the next page, Juliana. So you can use the page to do you can take a break after this, and next slide. And then the next slide on the screen. Any questions about the candy activity before we move on? It may seem like it's not important until you do it and you realize what people have to say about being in charge and being in control. and it could be really interesting for your team to learn. So let's go ahead and have Bill talk about registering to vote.
Okay, so registering to vote. So like the previous steps, you're also going to be allowing that 45 minutes for the topic. And your materials, you're also going to have your masking tape. Don't forget the fragrance-free markers. You're also going to have your big paper with these words on the top. And then, so you're going to have other places to register. What makes registering hard? Good registrating experiences, and then supporting registrations. So, all right. So the voter tool project PowerPoint slides number 8 through number 14, and other work equipment you're going to also have for this is registering to vote. Who can register to vote? Placing people, places people can register to vote. And then lastly, supporting registration. Then you're also going to be having handouts that you can copy. And this will be the voter registration forms and signature stamps forms, if your states use them for your election office.
I have a question here on the voter registration forms. In each of your states, are you authorized to collect registration forms from individuals? Or do you have to have somebody from the election office?
Gosh,
Can you repeat the question again?
So when you're doing registrations, are you allowed to register people? Or does somebody from the recorder's office have to do that?
Yes, we are. We can turn in. I mean, we can return ballots for people. Or excuse me, voter registration forms for people.
And that's California?
Yes.
Okay.
We often work with. I mean, we'll do joint
Able to
events
print
with.
out our.
Thank you, Dave.
Yep.
And I think that was Indiana trying to speak. Try again, please.
We're having a really hard time hearing you. It keeps cutting in and out. So I'm not sure if you can hear us.
Now we can.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll lose 10 seconds and then it comes back on. So I don't know if our connection is bad on our end. So I think we didn't completely understand the question. I think, are we allowed to print off our own registration papers and help people register? Is that what you said?
No, are you able to collect registrations and turn them in?
Yes, we can do that in Indiana.
Okay. And then in Arkansas, Darren, do you have that information?
Let's see, registering to vote. As I said, I'm gonna have to wait till I get off and I'll send it to you by, because it's on my computer when I downloaded it and things. So you talk about the information on how we vote and things.
So can you help somebody register to vote and turn it in, or does somebody from the recorder's office have to do that?
You had somebody register to vote and turn in. Ella, did you know the answer to that question?
No, sir, I'm sorry I don't. It's been so long since I registered.
And I haven't voted here yet and stuff. Oh, yet. And I just,
Let us know when you find out.
all right.
In some states, the reason we brought this up, in some states where we've done the training, you can help people fill it out. You want to make sure that when you're filling it out, that when you're helping them, you can help them. But in some states, if there is not a county person to collect them or a voting person to collect them that's authorized, they need to mail them on their own. And we just want you to check into your state and make sure you know if you're allowed to send them in or if the individual has to mail them on their own, is why Juliana brought up that question. Because it has happened where you cannot submit a lot of individuals' registrations without being an authorized person. So we just want you to know that you need to look into that and make sure you're allowed to send a group of registrations in, or if they have to send it in themselves.
All right.
Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, so continuing is so registering to vote. The purpose of the topic is learn who is eligible to vote in the USA. Find out where you can register to vote and how to fill out a registration card. So for slide number 8, registering to vote. Start by saying, next we will be talking about the different rules that say who can and who cannot register to vote. There are federal and state voting laws that you would need to follow. So it will be shown on slide number 9 and 10. So it'll be who can register to vote in the USA, and then you can read to the group. So you're going to introduce the topics by saying, next we will be talking about different places people can register to vote. It is also important to learn how to register to vote in different states.
You want to go over the slide, Bill, for who can register?
Yes, so here on the left, we have who can register to vote in the USA. Basic federal rules to be able to register to vote. You must be 18 years old. You must be a resident in your community and live our states for at least number of days before elections. You must be a citizen of the United States. You're not, and we always like to point this last one out. You do not have to read, write, or be able to use the voting machines to be able to vote. We always like to point that out because some people think that they wouldn't be able to vote if they don't know how to read or write.
We lost Indiana. If they can get back.
Did you want me to wait?
I have a couple of questions we can ask Arkansas and California, and the question is, can you be 17 to register, and then if you're turning 18 at registration at elections, is that possible in your state?
No, we cannot. This is April. No, we have to be 18 to vote.
To register.
Yes, register. We have to be 18.
One of the things that we know that there are lots of states if you are 17, but you're going to be 18 in your state by the time the election happens, then you can register.
I don't know if we can.
Yeah, that's probably a special case though, because that, I mean, it's like, I'm going to use an example. It's not going to your parking lot, I don't know. Like, when you start school, I had to, my birthday was in August, so I had to wait a little bit to go to school. I'm sorry about that example and interrupting.
No, I think you're close to the right example, but just investigate in your state. How about in California? If you're 17, can you register as long as you're going to be 18 by the time it's
Yeah,
vote?
they do have pre-registration opportunities for 16 and 17-year-olds.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if we do it in Arkansas or not.
Okay.
I'm doing right now. I don't know.
So that's a question for you guys to find out in Arkansas if they have pre-registering as long as you're going to be 18 by the time the vote happens. And it sounds like in California you can even do it at 16 and then wait for the election to happen when you're going to be 18 for the voting period. So that's just a question to jot down. See what your state says. Just in case you decide to teach your class to young voters, you might need to know that.
At the age of 17.
Sounds like Darren's finding
Here's a
out.
summary from USA.gov. 17-year-olds may register and vote in primary elections if they turn 18 before the next general election.
There you go.
Hey, excuse me. This is Darren.
Is there?
Yeah, I just got through checking. Yes, I just did it online. Yes, they say you can pre-register to vote if you are 16 or 17 years of age. You must at least 18 years old or older to at the next election. But you can pre-register at 16 or 17.
Awesome. Now you know. New information. Just in case there's somebody in your audience that has that question, you're now ready.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, so let's see, where did I leave off?
Next slide, Juliana.
Was it the next slide?
All right, and then we talk. This is something that you want to talk about, Bill, about all these issues.
Okay, so going on to slide number 10, who can register? Register to vote in our state. What does our state say about being in jail? What does our state say about being declared
incompetent?
Yeah, incompetent. Thank you, Teresa.
You're welcome.
Vote. What do our state ID's rules say? Our state says that you must be registered to vote these number of days before election day. And let's see. So
this is the slide that we have asked you guys to check on the rules for voting and registering to vote.
And so it may say right on your registration card that you cannot be a felon and vote. But in many states, if you have gone to a judge and reinstated your rights to vote after you've served your time, then you're eligible to vote. So these things have come up, so that's why we want you to be ready. What does it say about being a felon and after you've served your time? What does it say about being declared incompetent to vote? Right on the Arizona registration, it has these negative words about being a person who's under guardianship. It doesn't use the word guardianship. It uses words like incompetent. So that means that in some states, that person who's been declared incompetent also has to go see a judge to get that removed. So what does it say about that in your state? Does anybody know about the felony rules or the being declared incompetent in your state? Who knows their rules?
This is Gabe in California. In terms of registering being eligible to vote, you can't have been convicted of a felony or be on parole for a felony. And in terms of incompetent to vote, there are particular. We actually do a number of presentations on voting for people who are under a conservatorship and the steps with which people can take if they have had their right to vote taken away by a judge, how to get that reinstated if they are interested in doing that at some later point, and just a lot of the different rules around that, because people can have their right to vote taken away, but they can also get it reinstated at a later point.
And I think this is Carrie. One of the things that we really try to educate people here in California on is that things have changed, and that they're clear that only a judge can take away their right to vote. It has to be determined by a judge. So if they went to a meeting, an IPP meeting, and were told by a social worker that they can't vote, that isn't the end of that. If the person wants to vote, and as long as a judge has not said they're incompetent, they probably have the right to vote if they are they've answered all the questions in their state and are allowed to vote. So that's kind of a big change, because here in California, I don't know about your other states, but for many years people were not allowed to vote, and they may have only been served as maybe for medical purposes. And so now people are able to vote for the first time, many of them.
That's good news. People are questioning it. Go ahead, Darren.
This is Darren, yes, and again, I'm looking online. Yes, they say that you would not be a convicted felon or have a completely discharged or have previously discharged your sentence or been paroled. You must not previously have been judged mentally incompetent by a court or join others. Well, I can pronounce the other word, but yes, it's the same thing. You gotta, if you judge within being incompetent, you can't vote, and in felony, you can't vote. You got, like you said, I don't know about going, and I'll find out from somebody here, but I don't know about going and having them taken off and things, but they're saying that you can't if you have them on your records.
Okay, great. Let us know what that research tells you.
Well,
Have we Indiana back, Juliana?
Yes, Indiana's back.
Okay. So Indiana, we're talking about what does your state say about being in jail, and what does your state say about being incompetent to vote for registration?
As far as we know, if you are currently in jail, you cannot vote unless you're like in their pre-trial. So like if you have not been convicted, then you can still vote. But if you are serving time in jail after conviction, you cannot vote. But after serving your time, you can still vote. And then as far as being declared incompetent to vote, if you are declared incompetent through like guardianship ruling, you still have the right to vote here in Indiana. So that does not take away your right to vote.
Yeah, see how different they are between the states. So when people move, sometimes they're shocked by what they learn about their state. Sometimes they have to go to a judge. Sometimes they don't have a restriction. So we want to be able to answer these questions if people in our training bring them up. And you always want to bring up these different items so that you can help people know what their rights are. And that pre conviction is something that we are going to be adding to the training, because we know that pre-conviction in most states you can vote, but once they're convicted they cannot. So it's something that's really interesting about the voting rules that people need to know. And then as far as being having the word incompetent in your registration, it's something that some people didn't realize was there and they did not check it. And in reality, they're not supposed to vote, but they still do. They could have their registration removed, but most people wouldn't find out. So it's just like your word of honor kind of thing.
excuse me.
Yeah.
Excuse this Darren again. I'm sorry to bother, but I just got to find out that question. I talked to one of the applicants here. He did say that when it comes to a felon, they can go through the process of going to the judge and having those things removed from their records in order to vote again. But as far as the incompetent, they say unless they got a guardian who don't have a problem with their voting, they can go with them and probably hopefully try to have it removed. But it hasn't been no reported success of anybody doing that. But it seemed like, it's a red tape situation to have somebody who's declared incompetent to really get those things. I just found that out. I just went and found out. So being a felon, it may be pretty easier for them to get their voting rights back compared to somebody who's declared incompetent here in Arkansas.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That will help strengthen your training, guaranteed, because there are lots of myths and rumors about having a disability and not being able to vote, and how to get your rights back. So we want to know what that is so we can talk to the participants about it. Go ahead, Bill.
Oh, wait, hang on. Teresa, there's another issue that we're doing in Arizona, and I'm not sure if the other states are working on this issue. It's about registering and having people who are homeless who can vote. Does any of the states have that going on in their state, is to be able to register someone who's homeless so that they can vote?
This is Gabe in California. You can actually register to vote even if if you don't have a physical address. All you need is like a PO box for them to be able to mail materials or information to. But you don't technically need a physical address. You can, and I mean the physical address can be at the corner of Spring Street and 4th. So it doesn't necessarily have to be an actual physical address.
How about in Indiana?
Can you repeat the question again?
So do you have the issue about registering someone who is homeless to vote? Do you have any rules or any regulations or anything?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So that is currently a topic. This is Kristen from the PNA, Indiana Disability Rights. That's currently a topic that we are interested in getting more information on. But from what we understand at this point, those who are homeless are able to go to like a license branch and get an ID card free of charge, as long as there's some sort of process that they go through to show that they are homeless, or that it's a burden for them to be able to get another form of identification. So they can then use that ID to be able to vote, since we are a state that requires photo identification. And then as far as registration goes, they are allowed to use either like a shelter or some sort of facility where they are allowed to receive mail, or they can draw like a street corner or something that where they typically would stay. So we are looking further into this. It's a topic that's been brought up in our agency that we would like to clarify, but that's kind of what we know at this point in time.
Thank you, Kristen.
Darren, do you have that information about homeless?
Homeless? No, I don't have that information, no.
Well, it is a new topic, so if you want to investigate it, if it's something that you would like to find out, just to have in your information, just in case someone were to ask, you can find that out and add it to your training notes, just in case someone were to ask you.
All right.
Thank you. Would you like to go ahead, Bill?
Yes. So, let's see. So now we're heading to slide number 11, which is places people can register to vote. And then here's a list of places you can register to vote. Post office, town halls, grocery stores, libraries, the Department of Human Resources, the Department of Public Health, Medicaid agencies, departments of rehab services, or voc rehab. So I know there's other locations that you can go to that aren't listed here, and you can always change that depending on your audience. So let's see. Slide number 11. Okay, so this is slide number 11 to 13, which is, again, places people can register to vote. You can write down some comments on a big paper if people can point out, like I said, other registration spots that they've either gone to or know of. And then you're also going to be talking about registering experiences. Who is registered to vote? And you can ask people to raise their hands. You can take time to count everyone. And then you can ask them, how did you register to vote? And again, you can take the time to get those comments from people. If you have registered to vote, how did you go, or who? Sorry, how did it go for you? What were the good parts? What were the hard parts about registering to vote? And then again, you can write those comments on the big paper. What makes registering hard, or either their good experiences while they were registering. Finally, you can hand out a voter registration form if there's anyone who hasn't registered to vote and would like to.
And here's some more other places that people can register to vote.
Where do you see that at? Because I see slide 12. Oh, yes. Yes, here it is. Okay. So some four-year universities also have spots. Some colleges, where you get your ID, which is the DMV sometimes. You can get it online or on the web. You can also go to the govoter.org by clicking on the state contacts and clicking your state for your Secretary of State's information about voting. I know here you can also do it by online, and they'll send you a text message or email depending on which one you choose, or give the information or your information to them to send it to you by. Okay, here's some more places you can actually go to. Election boards, disability provider agencies, for example. You have the ARC, and then the Center of Independent Living, the League of Women Voters, and then you can always ask them after, are there any other ways that people can register to vote?
So does anybody else on here have an example of any other places that have not been mentioned?
This is Gabe in California. A lot of the county elections offices on their website will have either an online link or a link to a registration form that you can print out and complete it. But a lot of, like, for example, myself, when I moved from Orange County to LA County, I was able to it took 3 minutes literally for me to go on to their website, LA County's elections website, and type in my information, my new address, everything, and I hit submit, and I was registered to vote, and I got a confirmation email like 5 minutes later. So it was super simple. But a number of the counties out in California have that online registration.
And if you don't have a computer, you can go to a library and use their computer, or you can go to a post office, and they usually have the voter registration forms there.
All right. How about in Indiana?
In Indiana, you can. Sorry, you can register to vote at the BMV or the license branches, and then we were going to also say libraries.
Okay. Darren, how about in Arkansas and Ellen? Other places that were not mentioned?
There's one place, I can't think of the name of it, call of it, where Boone County and Harrison votes, where me and Alan live at. But it's what's accessible though.
Okay.
As
But I can't think of the name of that building though. I guess. Go ahead, tell them that, Alan.
Darren, other places?
Yes, as I said, I know the places I mentioned earlier that you can vote. What I'm going to do when I get off here, I'm going to go back on and I'm going to look and see if I can pull up any other locations that you can register at to vote. But as I said, I mean, I know that you can register at most of the I guess you said post office and thing, I believe. Hold on. It's time like he off the phone. As I'm gonna have to, I'll get those answers, and once I get, I'll send you the other things you did. This guy was looking online for the question about the you asked me earlier about the homeless and thing. That one I pulled up, and I did find out that you can vote here if you homeless. You can vote, but they say you can still vote. They said there should be a map of the area where they live, or should be that can be downloaded in section C of the registration form. But anyway, you can still vote if you're homeless here in Arkansas. But as I said, I'll email all those questions to you. I'm gonna go online and try to pull it up the thing. Then I'm gonna try to pull up the registration, and I'll try to send all of them to you, Juliana, so you can have all those answers.
Okay, good.
All right.
Okay, so going on, we have here support others to register. When you help people to register to vote, it's called a voter registration drive. To host a registration drive, our state does or does not ask you to take a class. You need to turn in the registration forms by this date, and then you can add any information about the state registration forms here. So let's see. One way is able to help people in your states is telling them to fill out the registration form. Next, you will work in a small group and fill out these registration forms. We would like each of you to participate how to help each other fill out the forms. A signature form, for example. After this, you will know how to volunteer for registration drives. Also, remind everyone that there will be a correct way to fill out the registration forms. So before you start that small group, there will be a few steps to fill out the registration forms. Don't forget to use a black or blue ink pen. You can sign the registration form. If you use a signature stamp, you'd also need them to fill that out on another form. Write out your full sheet address, and also don't forget to write clearly so they can read all your answers.
So does this hold true on everybody's registration forms?
Yeah, this is Gabe in California. if for folks who may not be able to sign their full name, they can, if they have on file an X, they can use that as their signature. So.
Indiana?
We don't require people who hold a voter registration drive to take a class. That is not something that we require in Indiana.
Darren?
I'm sorry, that's another answer I will have to find out. As I've been new here, I don't really know too many of the Arkansas laws about that in the registration form and what the form has on it.
I think so.
This is Gabe in California. You also, I forgot to mention, you don't have to take a class to ahead of time to be part of a voter registration event.
Good to know. Anything else, Teresa?
One of the things that why did we bring this up? This is, you do voter registration drives at events, and if you might be specifically doing a voter registration drive. One of the biggest things that people ask us, Juliana, can you show me the next slide, please? I want to make sure, go back if you can. One of the things that people came up to us and said was that the hardest thing is people will ask you, what party are you part of? And our natural instinct is to just answer questions. But when you're doing a voter registration drive, you want to make sure that you kind of practice your answer before time, because it's naturally to answer questions. We just kind of blurt things out. But when it comes to voting, we want to make sure that people choose the party that they want. And if they're not ready to choose, sometimes they have enough time to decide later. And on the voter registration card, it might even ask that, do you want to decide later? And call that in, or fill it out on an updated registration card at a later time after you get a chance to look at all the candidates and make your own decision. So that's one of the biggest things. And then a lot of people, so you'll want to make sure that you're ready to say, well, I want you to do your own voter registration. This is your power. This is your time to speak up. And it's important that you have the chance to register for the party that shares your beliefs. And make sure you don't moan if it's different than yours, or make a sound. I've even heard that happen, and that's not good either, like a disappointing sound. And I had to mention it to the person, do you realize you're doing this? You know, and they did not realize that they were doing it. So practice ahead of time to make sure that you're ready to answer and not give any opinion or make a sound that gives a feeling, because people will pick up on any of your body language or any of your facial expressions. So make sure that you do practice, and that is called being nonpartisan or bipartisan. So you'll hear those words, and that's what they mean, is making sure that your event, you don't encourage one way or the other, so that you practice that. And so that has happened, and I have seen it happen. So we do need to work with people ahead of time to make sure that they know how to answer that question. So that's just my feelings on it. Go ahead. What's the next?
Essie, did you want to say anything about that part?
Sorry, hit the wrong button to unmute. No, I think that you guys covered it well. I find it interesting how similar yet different the states are. You know, and I'm kind of like Darren, you made me think about something, and I had just heard this about the homeless, and I can't remember what it was. And so it's like, oh gosh, how could I forget something already? I just heard it last week. But no, I don't have anything else to add. Thank you.
There's some home.
How are we doing, everybody? Do you want to take a break?
Yes, I need to take one real quick.
Oh, yeah, you're not done yet.
Group in Indiana?
That's fine. We're willing to take a break. We is a couple of us that do have to go right at 3:30 because we have another meeting. But we're willing to take a break.
What, Gabe and Terry?
How long does this meeting last today?
That's fine with me. I mean,
It's fine, either way.
So like a 5-minute break?
All right, cool.
All right, mute everyone, Juliana, and we'll be right back.
All right, Terry, I'm going to put you on mute on my phone.
Go ahead and go to the next topic, Juliana. Next, we're going to talk about topic 4, rights and responsibilities. Go ahead to the next slide, Juliana. There is all the information to help you prepare. Let's go ahead to the next slide, the next page, Juliana. And again, you'll follow the instructions to help you prepare. And then we're going to talk about being a voter. And as a voter, you have rights and responsibilities. We're going to start talking about your rights as a voter. Your rights come from your state and national laws. Excuse me. And so, what are your voting rights? If you choose to do this topic, then you would have an opportunity to ask, what are your voting rights? What do people think are their voting rights? And most of them they do get. We have this slide here for you about HAVA. The Help America Vote Act is a federal law that makes voting accessible and says that states must make sure that everyone can vote privately and independently. And we know that states sometimes struggle with this one, so you may get some comments about that from individuals who have voted. The federal law says that you set up a statewide system to give people provisional ballots if there is a question about whether they can vote. And that opportunity to have a provisional ballot means that no matter what, you never leave the polls without voting. And you create a statewide computerized voter list. For a long time, they did not capture whether individuals had disabilities or not were voting. And we knew that we were one of the largest voting blocks in the country. So they started capturing that information about individuals who vote who have disabilities. Make sure that the polling places have access. For a long time, your PNAs have been working on surveying polling places to make sure that they're accessible, but there's so many of them. Some of the PNAs have brought self-advocates along so that they can learn about what makes a polling place accessible, so that when they go to vote, they can actually give the PNA feedback about their voting experience and whether the polling place that they went to locally was accessible. And that gives the Protection and Advocacy Organization really valuable information about that polling location, and helps them to do their work and know which ones need to be checked up on that they can correct for the next election. Next slide, please. So you have many voting rights, and we want to make sure that you know what they are. You can bring someone with you that you trust, big word, that you trust, to help you vote. Poll workers cannot deny this person, this support person, but in some places we have been told that that person needs to fill out a form to be a support person. So just be aware that that may happen to individuals if they bring someone with them. There are some people who cannot help you vote. That's your boss, a union officer at your job, a candidate who is on the ballot. They cannot help you vote. Next slide, please. And you can ask for help from the different officials from 2 different parties. This is also an area that we've heard some comment about. So you want to make sure that your participants know that if they need help from the poll workers, the election workers, that it should be 2 people who help them if they need help from 2 different parties. But they cannot explain the issues. So you must be a prepared voter. They cannot explain them. Next slide. You can get a new ballot if you make a mistake. Everybody makes mistakes sometimes, and it is your right to be given a new ballot if you make a mistake on your first one. You can get up to 2 replacement ballots if you make a mistake. Next slide. You can ask for a provisional ballot, and this is sometimes called an affidavit ballot, we heard in some states. So you might hear a provisional or affidavit ballot if you are told that you cannot vote for some reason. But states may not count these ballots, so it is best to make sure that you have proof and why you cannot vote by asking for a provisional ballot. What this means is they should tell you how many days you have to get the information to correct the ballot. So if for some reason you do not have, you come in and you don't have the right address on your ID, but you say, I moved here, this is my polling location, I just forgot to bring the information you need to show that I moved. And so that's just one example, but I do live in this precinct or this district and I want to vote. So go ahead and fill out the provisional ballot. Ask, they should tell you how long, but if not, ask how many days you have to prove that you are in this new location, and then bring it in. There could be other reasons that you need a provisional ballot. You don't have what you need, so ask for a provisional ballot. And again, never leave the polling location without voting. Next slide, please. You do not need to have a disability to use the machines that they have. The Help America Vote Act says that every polling place must have an accessible voting booth to help people vote privately and independently. You do not have to have a disability to use the machine. So if, for example, there's long lines and things, you want to just go and vote, and you can use the machines. And Juliana, you just quickly share your example of what happened to you.
Yes, so there was one time I went to go vote, and oh yes, I went to go vote, and they had not situated the voting machine, so the voting machines were not on, and so they were trying to figure it out. And so in the meantime, while they were figuring it out, a poll worker went over and asked the other poll workers if I was deaf, and if I was, that she could help me fill out a ballot. And so then the other poll worker told her, oh, we're not allowed to ask people if they have a disability or not.
So that's the rules, is They're not supposed to ask you what kind of disability you have if you ask to use the voting booth. So we encourage the folks that don't have disabilities to try it out and see what happens to make sure that they're not breaking the rules about voting, but also to make sure that they have the machines set up and that they're ready to use. So we have people practice that just to see what happens in your state, so you can help improve that situation if it does happen. Next slide. And make sure you are registered to vote, that you know the issues and candidates that you want to vote for, and ask questions if you need some help. If for some reason you get stuck, you can ask the poll workers for support. Just remember that there should be two. Next slide. Be a role model as an informed voter and get out and vote. Help someone else learn how to vote. And remember, celebrate your choice and your voice when you vote. I proudly wear my "I voted" sticker and tell people, did you vote? You still got time, or we have to help you get ready for next time. Next slide, please. And get involved in other ways in voting and elections. Call your election board and find out where you can register to vote and vote on election day. Next slide. And another responsibility that you have, ask the poll worker for voting information in Braille and in large print. This says on tape, or in in other accessible formats. And when you're asking for this information, just make sure you give them enough time to get that information for you. It's not something that can be done quickly, so make sure you give them plenty of time, a few weeks, if not longer. The League of Women Voters is available to support you in getting information on candidates and issues. In some states, they make an easy read voter's guide. Next slide, please. And this is a poem that a participant in one of our trainings wrote. In our very first training, Jeff Ridgway from Alabama wrote this poem about how he was feeling about learning about voting. And they say I can't vote. They say the decision is not mine. They say I don't understand. I guess they think they're being kind. I wonder what they would say or think if they only knew that when they call the president our president, I want to call him mine too. If I never get the chance to vote, pulling the lever, punching the card, or writing his name down, I stay the same, dumb, misinformed, unchanged, unempowered. That is what the world expects me to be, but I want so much more. I want to be the most educated, the most informed, the most totally changed, the most totally empowered person that I can be when I vote. I can make a difference, and then I can say with pride, not yours, not theirs, but my president, because I helped put him there. And it's hard for us to say it sometimes because we don't realize how powerful our trainings can be. But this is a poem that almost always moves your audience and helps them feel that power, maybe for the first time. And this is about all the people that you elect. You want to make sure that they feel that total power when they elect their officials. Next slide, please, Juliana. You want to move the pages up?
We have a few more minutes and then we need to end our presentation.
Any questions right now? About what you heard on the training so far? Okay, Julia, next
No
slide.
questions from Indiana.
Okay. California?
No questions from me.
I don't have any questions.
Ellen?
I'm fine.
Okay. Let's go ahead to the next slide, please. Bill, would you like to tell us about the next week?
Yeah, I was muted. Sorry. Okay, so here we go. Learning how to plan your trainings. All right, so don't forget to use topics. To use on all topics, learn and opinions on how to personalize the training for your state. By personalizing, we mean research your state's voting process and learn how to use or learn how the toolkit is designed to adjust to your training audience needs. So review state homework team or STAME team homework, how to organize and teach the training, discuss the importance of completing the evaluations, type in the technical assistance provided by the SABE GoVoter project staff. So yeah.
So after we finish going through the training, we'll work on all of these different things. Next slide, Juliana.
So for next week, we want to see if you can tell us how voting fits in your life and to tell us what is a primary election and why primary elections are important, and what is a general election and why are general elections important as well, and what are some examples of why a ballot would not be counted in the candy game. So the more you review the toolkit, the better familiar you are when you train others. And I want to give you an example. Well, we'll do that for next time, right, Teresa?
Yes.
And
We'll share examples just in case you get stuck. So any questions about the homework?
Y'all gonna send out a reminder on what we need to be looking for, right?
Yes.
Juliana,
Okay.
you send this out to them?
Yes, I'll send it out today. And I believe I need to get Jill Smith's email address. So Amanda or Kelsey or Christine, could you send me her email address?
Yeah, I can, or I can just, I don't know that she'll be participating in all of the calls. I just wanted her to know what was kind of going on and see kind of what we were doing. So it serves as a support for our self-advocates as well. So
Okay.
I can send you it.
Okay,
great. Okay. if there are no questions about the training, there was different things that that we talked about during the topics that maybe you want to follow up on, and make sure all of your team members have the answers to those questions to help build their training. And Juliana, can you break and show us where they would put some of that information, break into the regular view of the PowerPoint? So what we do is we put our information down in the bottom in our notes. And I know that some people have never used the notes section on their PowerPoint. So if you are having trouble figuring, excuse me, figuring out how to use that, it does have limited space. So you may have notes that you carry with you or you have in your book or your binder, just to help answer those questions in case they come up. And then if you are having trouble printing, the same thing can happen if you've never printed notes. I have helped some self-advocates learn how to use the PowerPoint on printing their notes also. We really want to thank you for being here with us today. And is there any other comments from the training team of items that we may have not explained or that you had an idea about? Let's start with Bill. Anything you want to add?
No.
Okay. Okay. And Essie, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't.
Okay. Juliana?
Just want to make sure that everybody has all the information they need to fill out these slides on the presentation. So making sure you put the number of days before the election, and then make sure you have all the information about who can register in your state. Those are what I think are very important. And then again, when you are putting your training together, you can add other locations or delete some of these locations. It's up to you.
Sometimes we take out the obvious ones and add, make sure that they have information that they can add. So that's one thing that you can do too, is you can take some of the information out of the slides so that your audience can participate more. Is there any other questions before we exit?
Well, Juliana, will you please also, once you send for this thing for week 2 homework, you also send a kind of brief summary and reminder of the other things that you need from, so I can go ahead and make, because I get caught up with work or something else and I'll forget. So I know you said something about who can vote, the requirements of the state. I think you said you need, but if you can send me just a list of other things you need, I can add that to this and send them to you. You can have everything, and hopefully I can get everything to you before next week's meeting.
All right, thank you.
Excuse me?
All right, we'll do.
All right, thank you.
Wonderful. Well, again, I hope that you enjoyed the discussion with all the states and learned a little bit about how different it can be. And sometimes you have individuals that move from other places. That's why it's important to make sure that you stay up to date on what's going on in your state, but also be able to help them transition if they have moved recently. That's also very helpful. Again, I'd like to thank everyone and thank all of our presenters and our GoVoter team. for participating today. And everyone have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, thank you.